This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight on the election trail, a PC campaign worker in Lunenburg ends up in hot water over coffee cards.
Funding feud. Municipal leaders defend the federal housing fund as Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives vow cuts.
And these Dalhousie University researchers are trying to help communities around the world access safe drinking water.
Gusty northerly winds and chilly temperatures for Tuesday, plus some flurries in the mix. Your full forecast is coming up.
Good evening. Provincial politicians are back campaigning after a brief pause to take in Remembrance Day observances in their constituencies. Today, the NDP is promising a major new initiative aimed at getting hundreds of people into starter homes.
As for the PCs and the Liberals, they're locked in a dispute over free coffee cards and whether that constitutes an attempt to buy votes. Jean Laroche has more.
New Democrats took their campaign to a Dartmouth neighborhood inside this small house to make their most significant housing announcement to date. Claudia Chender is promising to build 500 starter homes.
The reality is that with prefabricated housing techniques, some of which are being used here in Dartmouth North right now, like True North Crescent, those homes can go up more quickly, more affordably, and more efficiently.
The homes would be rent to own for people who earn less than $100,000 a year. The Liberals and the PCs rehashed promises already announced in their platform, but it's a campaign event outside of Tim Hortons in Lunenburg over the weekend that has the Liberals and the PCs at odds. Susan Corkum-Greek's campaign manager handed out coffee cards during the event, which drew this accusation.
We did receive reports in Lunenburg where the Conservative candidate and cabinet minister was handing out gift cards for votes, allegedly. So that certainly is worthy of an investigation by Elections Nova Scotia.
This morning, the PC leader seemed only vaguely aware that a campaign was handing out free coffee cards.
And I was there in the afternoon for some door knocking. I think they may have been at Tim Hortons in the morning, so possibly, but it wouldn't be uncommon for political events to have coffee and donuts. This might be a spin on that, but we'll let Elections Nova Scotia have their say.
The local campaign manager has resigned after admitting he did hand out gift cards. Each was worth the price of a small coffee, about $2. In an email explaining his actions, he wrote, "The candidate did not know this had happened. I am sincerely sorry that my actions have caused a distraction to a candidate I have so much respect for." Elections Nova Scotia is trying to determine whether this was an attempt to buy votes, which would be illegal, or simply bad judgment. Jean Laroche, CBC News, Halifax.
For those who have lost loved ones to addiction, they want to know what the political parties plan to do to reverse rising overdose deaths. In 2021, PC leader Tim Houston was elected with a promise of universal mental health care. But the party's platform in this election has no mention of future plans.
It's something that we care deeply about and care deeply enough to establish a minister, somebody at the highest level of government, to focus on addictions and mental health. So we'll continue on that path.
It's certainly something that needs a focus from this government, and it's something that we would focus on, and we'll be talking about that in the days to come.
The hospitals can't take them because they're overcrowded. The counseling options that are available are very expensive in the private sector in Nova Scotia and beyond, and we have to do better.
The Liberal platform includes establishing mental health walk-in clinics. The NDPs have not released a platform yet. Ryan Snoddon with us now, talking weather, of course.
And talking flurries.
Yeah, that's right. And flurries in the mix for Wednesday, not Tuesday, as I said in the headlines. These short weeks, they always get you, right? High temperatures today, as you can see, it was, we peaked in the double digits, even 15 down in Shelburne. Temperatures have been tumbling ever since. And what we're looking at with this trough that's going to be continuing to move through this evening is that colder air ushering in those very, very cool temperatures the brisk northerly winds, which are going to be gusting 50, 60, 70, even 80 kilometers per hour in through Cape Breton. And yes, that chance for flurries mixing in overnight and throughout the day on Wednesday. So it is going to be quite brisk indeed. Highs 0 to 2 tomorrow. You factor in the winds, it's going to be feeling below the freezing mark, widespread, and a really, really cold day. So make sure you bundle up. And yes, we could all see a little trace of snow on the grass by the time we get into Wednesday morning or even Wednesday evening, with that snow continuing in the northeast, where in the higher terrain areas we could pick up as much as 5 to 10 centimeters. So yeah, it's definitely a change in the forecast.
Yeah, 'tis the time of year for sure. Okay, Ryan, thanks so much.
Ryan.
Thank you.
A researcher studying the rise of extremism in Atlantic Canada says recent Ku Klux Klan costumes at a Cape Breton Halloween party are an example of an effort by far-right groups to normalize hateful attitudes in the region. Josh Hoffman explains.
Far-right extremism in Atlantic Canada is growing, according to research out of the University of New Brunswick. There were a combined 74 incidents throughout the region in 2018 and 2019. That's more than double the total number in the entire decade between 2000 and 2010. One researcher says the fact people thought it was acceptable to wear symbols of hate at a Halloween party in Cape Breton last month shows extremist values are in the mainstream.
Joke or not, they are essentially part of this, or symptomatic of this larger effort to make these very, very dangerous behaviors seem normal.
According to Hoffman, Nova Scotia has the highest rate of far-right extremism in the region, followed by New Brunswick. Two provinces have had relationships with the KKK that go back 100 years, according to one author who has written about the white supremacist group's activity in Canada. The group has continued to try to have a presence in the region throughout the decades, including in 1981, when members tried to open a chapter in Halifax, but were met by protest. As recently as 2017, members were found handing out recruitment pamphlets in Fredericton.
I am struck by the persistence of the same kinds of narratives and political discourse that surrounded the Klan 100 years ago, and that continues to persist today.
For Hoffman, he's concerned that as extremist rhetoric and incidents become more common, it will embolden some individuals to act violently.
This is why we need to stand up and say dressing up like the KKK is not acceptable.
Josh Hoffman, CBC News, Halifax.
In his first council meeting as Halifax mayor today, Andy Fillmore asked to retract a list of possible future encampments and not open anymore. That list includes 8 parks and green spaces, including sections of the Halifax Common and Point Pleasant Park. There are over 100 people sleeping rough in Halifax's 5 designated and multiple undesignated sites. But Fillmore says there are enough indoor spaces to bring people inside.
I'm one vote on the council, and we'll see where the conversation and debate leads with council. But it's my strongly held belief that there are alternatives to tents that exist now, and that the compassionate way forward, given the new opportunities that exist, is to not activate those expanded or future encampment sites.
Fillmore's motion will come back to council at a future meeting. Staff would then put together a report on the issue.
So municipal leaders are defending a federal funding stream that the Conservatives say they would cut. The Housing Accelerator Fund has granted millions of dollars to 16 municipalities and First Nations in the province. But Pierre Poilievre says the fund hasn't done enough. Haley Ryan has more.
A promise from the federal Conservatives to axe a fund that some municipalities in Nova Scotia depend on has brought up concerns. The Housing Accelerator Fund has so far committed $1 billion to more than 170 municipalities and First Nations across Canada to help them fast-track housing. But Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says it hasn't done enough, and if elected, he'd use the fund to pay for a GST cut on new homes under $1 million.
By ending failed Liberal housing policies, like their Housing Accelerator Fund, which gives money to big city governments that block housing construction with red tape.
Many of the 16 municipalities and First Nations in Nova Scotia who have gotten accelerator funding are small communities. The town of Westville has just under 4,000 people. They're getting $1.5 million over 4 years.
The Housing Accelerator Fund, in my opinion, has more impact on smaller communities than it does in some of the larger urban cities, probably, where they have greater sources of revenue.
Mayor White says the money will go to projects Westville couldn't do otherwise, like incentives for local developers and finding a new water source to support housing growth. It's unclear exactly how Polyev would handle this cut and whether towns like Westville would still have their future funding delivered.
Losing it would be a significant blow now that we've had it. And now we know that we're getting it for the next 3 years and it can plan accordingly.
Over in the town of Pictou, they're using their $770,000 grant to help upgrade their stormwater system. The mayor says a GST cut for new homes is a good idea, but shouldn't come at the expense of the Accelerator Fund.
We have a lot of aged infrastructure. We've done a good job in that over the last 10 years, but we're in a catch-up mode here, and in terms of trying to make sure that we're ready to provide the housing that people are crying for, really.
The federal Liberals say cutting the fund could put municipalities in jeopardy for backing out of commitments. Both Halifax and Cape Breton regional municipalities have committed millions of their accelerator dollars to developers or nonprofits for specific affordable housing projects. The Conservatives have not said yet how or if they would replace this stream to help local governments prepare for new growth. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
Cape Breton Regional Municipality is looking for a new chief administrative officer. Marie Walsh is retiring this week after 7 years. She says at 60 years old, she wants to spend more time with family and less time fighting with the province.
You're constantly at odds with other people when you're trying to advocate for the municipality, and it gets tiring. And it's time for me. You're, fighting with the province, and I'm sure the province will be anxious to see me go. But it's time for someone else to do that. I think I've given a lot, and I'm done with the fight. I'm done with that role, and I want to move on to bigger and better things.
Mayor Cecil Clark says the CBRM will begin the process of replacing Walsh in December. Researchers at Dalhousie University are hoping a newly designed device can eventually help communities around the world have better access to safe drinking water.
Water scarcity affects about 2.2 million people globally. As Julian Agrio reports, the new low-tech device works by treating ocean water and leaving the salt behind.
A dome-shaped object floats in the waters of Halifax Northwest Arm. It is not a buoy, but rather a new desalination device designed by two professors. It only costs $5 to make. It's constructed of recycled tires, cotton, and plastic. It also uses solar power to function, so it can be used in areas with no electricity. Professor Mira Dasog co-led this project. She says its purpose is to combat water scarcity in communities at a low cost.
It produces a liter of water for less than a cent. So we want to be able to now actually do or test this device in the communities that might use it in the future.
She says it took them 4 years of work and 2 other models to land on this design. Researchers had to account for factors like waves, changing weather, and how the system might perform on cloudy days. Professor Matthew Margerson co-led the project. He says the device has cotton wicks at the bottom to absorb ocean water and transport it to its dome. Inside, a fiber coated with titanium carbide powder captures sunlight to create heat, evaporating the water and leaving the salt behind. The steam condensates on the dome and it's collected in a sealed bag.
So if you think about a thermal evaporation, that's kind of how it's been done in the past, is you just burn some kind of fuel to heat up the water, it boils and evaporates. We're just switching out that fuel source, so the sunlight is what's causing the energy and that heats up our particles. They evaporate the water and it recondenses and we collect it.
The result? Drinking water that comes directly from the ocean, with a little bit of an aftertaste. They say the system is designed so that the bits of recycled tires can't leach into the ocean or the desalinated water. This gadget passed all of its tests in Nova Scotian waters. So next year they'll test it in different conditions in South Asia, where they hope to see how practical it is in the real world. Juliana Grillo, CBC News, Halifax.
And there's a live look through the lens of our harbor cam. Ryan is up next with full weather forecast. We will see you in just a few minutes. Well, come voting day, Nova Scotians in the riding of Cumberland North will be deciding whether to re-elect their independent MLA or choose a new representative.
The riding stretches from Pugwash to Amherst and runs along the New Brunswick border. The CBC's Luke Ettinger dropped by the riding to find out more.
There we are. Hello there. How you doing?
Independent candidate Elizabeth Smith-McCrossan is back on the campaign trail. In 2021, she was booted from the Nova Scotia PC caucus over her involvement in a protest related to COVID-19 guidelines. Still, 53% of voters supported her bid to represent Cumberland North as an independent in the last election.
When I'm knocking on doors this election, one of the differences that I see is I'm knocking on doors of people that I've helped over the last 3 years, and that's very rewarding.
The Liberals finished second 3 years ago. They have a new candidate this time around. Kurt Dittner, a retiree and newcomer to Amherst, has been a lifelong member of the party.
So what I'm hearing is people feel the money doesn't come here.
it never seems to get to our riding. They're saying everything is out of Halifax, everything's for the big city. It seems to stop at the pass. So you need an elected official in a official party to move ahead and get services here.
A similar perspective held by Bill Dow, the PC candidate and former chair of the Chamber of Commerce.
It's hard for an independent to make inroads and to negotiate with a government. So, and I'm not going to say anything bad about the independent. All I know is that I think as being a part of the team, I have a lot better chance of getting accomplishments here than somebody working on their own.
The NDP is also fielding a candidate in Cumberland North. Tyson Boyd wasn't available for an interview. A political scientist says some parties may appreciate an independent voice, while the PCs are likely hungry to win Cumberland North back.
So if they think they can get it back and, kind of lose a thorn in their side, they'd be happy to do that.
Marlin says independents often have to work harder and need name recognition, something Smith McCrossan has on the streets of Amherst.
Because she's for the people, and she do help people a lot, and I hope she get in.
Still not sure. I voted just about everything at some point in my life.
McLean says protecting the Chignecto Isthmus is one of his top priorities. The land connection between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, as well as affordability and healthcare, are other top issues here in Cumberland North. Luke Ettinger, CBC News, Amherst.
And coming up this Thursday, leaders from Nova Scotia's Progressive Conservatives, Liberals and NDP will come together for a live commercial-free debate to discuss issues affecting Nova Scotians.
You can join Amy and me at 6 o'clock on Thursday, replacing our supper hour show that night. The debate will last 90 minutes. You can also watch it on CBC Gem, our Nova Scotia YouTube page, and on our website. It will also be broadcast on CBC Radio 1. Right now, all the talk is about possible flurries in the province of Nova Scotia.
Yeah, what a turn, huh?
Tis the season, I guess, right? And yeah, this is really kind of a shot across the bow a little bit to give everybody a heads up that it is into winter tire season. We're getting there, right?
Yes.
Especially if you are traveling a lot through the Cobequid Pass. The 104 between Truro and Antigonish, that has so many higher terrain spots that, as we showed you earlier, and I'll show you again, the map of the possible snowfall. Have a look at the temperatures out there right now. So we were in the double digits most of the province, or a good portion of the province anyway, and we have started to fall. It's just 2 in Amherst, 5 at the airport, 7 downtown Halifax is still hanging on to 8 degrees at Western Head, 9 at Mallee Falls and into the Canso area. That wind, though, from the north, and you can see for the western half of the province, it has really kicked in. Those are sustained winds, and you can see really howling over the Digby Neck right now. Some gusts to 78 there at last check. Yarmouth gusting just shy of 50, Truro as well, and the wind's much lighter here to the east of this boundary, which is moving its way through. But yeah, as it does pass through, the showers changing to a chance for some flurries, and yeah, likely already snowing over the Cobequid Pass this evening, and we'll continue to see that changeover to snow. And yeah, as we mentioned earlier, the potential for trace amounts for many of us tomorrow morning, a little coating on the grass. But those higher terrain areas, Cobequid Pass, Mount Tom, those areas definitely could pick up 5 centimeters today, and into tomorrow could pick up as much as 10 centimeters by the time we're said and done. Area of high pressure is going to be sweeping in and trying to clear us out, but that low is going to be stalled and working its way back west again, as you'll see here. And then we've got a couple lows out west, but those really aren't going to be impacting us, as you will see here with the setup. Just to give you a little outlook, it's looking more November-like all the time on the big national map. Now, as we look at the temperatures tonight, we're near the freezing mark. Sustained winds near 40 rather, gusting 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, except gusting to 80, Cape Breton and the Northumberland shore. As we time this out, you can see where temperatures will slowly tick down through this evening, even down in the Yarmouth area, down near the freezing mark, and most of us tomorrow morning will be at least near the freezing mark, within a degree or 2. And there's that flurry action that continues Wednesday, especially in the higher terrain areas here of the north and east. Best chance for sunshine tomorrow is going to be here in the western third of the province. But not going to see a whole lot here in Cape Breton, where we will see those flurries mixing in throughout the day. Cape Breton Highlands, again, could pick up a couple centimeters tonight and another 5 centimeters tomorrow with those sustained winds, 50 gusting to 80 kilometers per hour into the central parts of the province. Again, chance for some sun breaks, but a pretty cloudy day here and a gusty day gusting to 70. And we will see those flurry chances off and on, especially in the morning and into the western parts. Chance for a flurry here in the morning, and then generally a mainly cloudy day, those winds gusting to 70 as well. Timing out those winds, and you can see we all kick into the winds overnight tonight. Tomorrow, it is just a gusty day, so this will add to that raw feel for sure. With temperatures near the freezing mark, it's going to be feeling below freezing. And then for Thursday, the winds staying very, very gusty from the north to northeast. So yeah, Thursday, temperatures 3, 5, 6 degrees. It's really going to be feeling, again, quite raw indeed. As we look at the outlook here, we'll see a little bit more in the way of sun for the west, as we said, on Wednesday and again on Thursday. And then this high moves off to the north. That's going to open the door and allow this low to retrograde back to the west. So note all this wet weather offshore. That moves back in for Friday. Temperatures were actually going to warm up because this is wrapping in some milder air. And so we'll actually see temperatures on the rise throughout the day on Friday, maybe a few flurries early on Friday morning, and then over to rain and showers Saturday and Sunday and Monday. Yeah, not an ideal outlook here at all, but yeah, 'tis November, right? So if you do see some sun over the next couple of days, albeit chilly sunshine, do try to get out and enjoy, because there won't be a whole lot here into the long-range forecast. So the temperatures at least are looking a little bit milder towards the weekend. Tom and Amy.
Yeah, make the most of it.
Silver lining, Ryan.
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, labor troubles. Canada Post workers could be off the job by the end of the week. We'll speak with a local head of the union about the potential job action.
Canada Post workers could be off the job as early as Friday. The union and the corporation have been bargaining over a new contract for almost a year.
But they have yet to reach an agreement. Nisha Patel looks at what a strike or lockout could mean.
It's the busiest time of year for Canada Post leading up to the holidays, but postal workers are preparing to walk out.
We're fighting, for fair wages. We're also fighting for improved health and safety. We're fighting to retire with dignity.
After a year of negotiations, the two sides are still far apart. If they don't reach a deal, the union will be in a position to strike just after midnight on Friday.
Obviously, we'd prefer to get an agreement in the next 72 hours and put this behind us and try to build back our holiday volumes.
Wages are one sticking point. Canada Post has offered an 11.5% pay bump over 4 years. The union is pushing for 23%. Canada Post has also proposed expanding delivery to weekends, which the union has resisted. For now, the federal government won't step in.
We will make every effort possible to keep them at the table and keep them talking. And we hope to achieve a negotiated settlement there.
Canada Post said a strike would further strain its finances. The Crown Corporation has lost $3 billion since 2018. For small business owners like Don McCowan, the timing of it all couldn't be worse.
It is drastic. Well, 45% of our business goes out through Canada Post. So if all of a sudden we can't ship that 45%, you can't meet your overhead.
This is the time of year when he sees the biggest demand for his toy models. He says half of his revenues could disappear.
We have no backup for the simple reason that backup is very expensive. The courier companies charge a lot more.
During past labor disputes, the union has used rotating strikes to minimize disruptions. A full national strike is also on the table. That would shut down operations entirely. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Dwayne Corner is with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. First of all, sir, what is the state of negotiations? I understand there was an offer presented.
The corporation put out 2 global offers and we put 2 responses back. And we're still at the negotiating table. As of today, we put out a 72-hour notice to go out on strike, and the corporation responded and put out a 72-hour notice to lock us out.
And so, given that whole backdrop, what impact is this threat of a strike or a lockout already having on Canada Post and its customers, as far as you know?
Volumes are down as customers are going elsewhere at the moment, which is not what anybody wants. We want the corporation to stay at the bargaining table and negotiate a contract. We want to keep delivering mail for the customers, as we always do.
Yeah, it's not like it used to be. There are other options that people can choose, couriers and so on. How much public support do you think there's out there for a strike or a lockout at Canada Post?
Well, I hope there's a lot of support, because I'd hope the Canadians will understand what we're fighting for, or what the issues are. We're trying to maintain a public post office. It's not a race to the bottom. There are other companies out there, yes, but we're a public post office, and we're trying to maintain that. We're not taxpayer funded. We contribute to. We're Canadian citizens. We pay taxes like everyone else.
Canada Post, as everyone knows, is having lots of troubles these days, lost billions of dollars in the last few years. Is it realistic to be demanding much of Canada Post at this point?
Well, a lot of what they're claiming as losses is a numbers game. They don't say about the investments they've made in the plants across the country, such as the Albert Jackson plant, which cost several $100 million. They don't talk about the fact that they're electrifying fleets across country. We have one of the largest delivery fleets in the country. And basically what their issue is that they're not generating revenue. We've offered other services or other ideas such as postal banking like they have in Japan, which is profitable. We've offered plenty of ideas that would help them generate services and revenue.
Speaking of services, why is Canada Post's proposal to expand parcel delivery service to the evenings and weekends, much like the competition has, to allow it to compete with those other carriers, why has that been such a point of contention during these negotiations?
We're not against a weekend and evening delivery, but we're against it doing it at the expense of full-time jobs. They've always had the ability to deliver on the weekends, but it's that the way they're proposing will affect full-time Monday to Friday jobs. And we talk about work-life balance and issues like that, but they have the ability. But they're not agreeing to our proposals.
So I understand there's several outstanding issues. Short-term disability is one of them?
There's short-term disability, there's injury on duty leave. There's also the fact that basically we need a fair wage increase. We need to be able to retire in dignity. They're trying to bring in a two-tier pension plan. They're trying to change the benefit plan. There's a few other issues kicking around.
And so, as you point out, and as the corporation points out, it's troubling times at Canada Post in many ways. This labor disruption, just part of it. Is it time to look at reviews of the way that Canada Post operates?
I think it's time to look at how management is operating. We put out several proposals out there that would help generate revenue for the corporation. They're not agreeing to it. They're not willing to look at it, but they're willing to keep spending money on, for instance, they should give their supervisors at-risk pay, bonuses. The labor costs aren't the issue here. It's the corporation and how they're spending money.
Well, we'll see how it all unfolds. Dwayne Corner, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Coming up, lockouts at ports in 2 of Canada's largest cities threaten the country's economy.
And fare free, why more Canadian communities are offering up free transit to commuters. Welcome back. The federal government is sending labor disputes at ports in Montreal and Vancouver to binding arbitration.
The labor minister says the country can't afford the economic cost of work stoppages at its two largest ports. Vanessa Lee reports.
Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon says he didn't make the decision lightly. He says negotiations in BC have been going on since 2022. And despite both sides meeting with federal mediators over the weekend, no progress was made. In Montreal, negotiations have been going on since last year. The Maritime Employers Association locked out nearly 1,200 workers after they rejected the latest offer. McKinnon says negotiated agreements are the best way forward, but, quote, "We must not allow Canadians to suffer when certain parties don't fulfill their responsibility to reach an agreement." He says the stoppages at Canada's biggest ports are significantly impacting the economy, supply chain, thousands of jobs, and the country's reputation as a reliable trading partner.
We want to make sure that our economy continues to function, that our trading relationships continue to function, and that international commitments that Canadian companies and workers have made to supply other countries are honored.
Here in Montreal, the union representing longshore workers calls it a dark day for workers' rights. In a statement, it says collective bargaining is a constitutional right, and Canadians should be very concerned. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
The head of the Church of England has resigned. Justin Welby says he failed to investigate allegations of abuse by a volunteer at a Christian summer camp decades ago. The British Prime Minister reacted to the news.
My thoughts, as they are with all of these issues, are with the victims here who have obviously been failed very, very badly.
The resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury follows a report criticizing him over his handling of the allegations. The report said the volunteer subjected more than 100 boys and young men to what it calls, quote, brutal and horrific physical and sexual abuse over a 40-year period, much of it in Africa. Welby became Archbishop in 2013.
Donald Trump is wasting no time assembling the team he wants around him when he launches his second term in the White House. And a couple of his failed opponents within the Republican Party are in line for some key positions. Katie Simpson has the details.
Donald Trump is working to ensure his team is ready to go the day he returns to the White House, selecting Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, to be his Secretary of State. Trump and Rubio were rivals back in 2016 as they fought over the Republican presidential nomination.
Little Marco Rubio, he's a total disaster.
They've since made up, and Rubio has extensive experience on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and is considered a hawk on China and Iran. The former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, will be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, a pivotal role as Trump reaffirms U.S. support for its ally. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem will head up the Department of Homeland Security. She's a rising star within the Republican Party, but faced criticism for admitting to killing her 14-month-old dog because the dog wasn't good at hunting. And Florida Congressman Mike Waltz will be Trump's new national security advisor. He's a staunch Trump loyalist who has criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the past, promoting Pierre Poilievre on social media, writing, "This guy is going to send Trudeau packing in 2025 finally and start digging Canada out of the progressive mess it's in." Some Canadian leaders are working to make sure they too are ready for the new Trump administration. Ontario Premier Doug Ford suggesting Canada get in Trump's good graces by cutting Mexico out of the updated North American Free Trade Agreement, punishing Mexico for skirting the rules of the agreement by accepting cheap Chinese-made imports.
We do a bilateral trade deal with the U.S., and if Mexico wants a bilateral trade deal with Canada, God bless them. But I'm not going to be drawn down with these cheap imports taking men and women's jobs from hardworking Ontarians.
Prime Minister Trudeau isn't shutting the idea down completely, noting that most allies have a problem with China's trade practices. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
The election of Donald Trump as U.S. president has emboldened hardliners in the Israeli cabinet. The finance minister says he'll push for Israel to annex parts of the occupied West Bank. Sasha Petrusik reports.
Israel has signaled that it is interested in annexing, seizing the land that's underneath about 150 of its settlements in the occupied West Bank. These settlements are considered illegal under international law, but they've been expanding rapidly. The territory is an area that belongs to Palestinians under that law, but has been gradually coming under the control of various Israeli groups. They've been building communities like the one over my shoulder here on that hilltop, and they have effectively dotted the West Bank with these areas that are not legally under Israeli control. Well, yesterday, one of the key cabinet ministers, who also happens to be a settler himself, Bezalel Smotrich, he said that he's asked his officials to draw up plans to annex the land under these settlements. And the Prime Minister today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, said that it is time to discuss how they can become part of Israel now that Donald Trump is going into the White House. Donald Trump is considered a friend of Israel. The last time he was in power, he allowed Israel to claim sovereignty over the occupied Golan Heights in the north. He also recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, something that under international law does not apply. However, this time they see Trump coming into the White House and saying that they will try to push him to recognize these settlements as well. The settlements, of course, have been very controversial among Palestinians here. Over the past months, the number of attacks by settlers on Palestinians has increased, and the tension between the two sides has only grown. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Ramallah.
The number of people who take public transit has gone down in many parts of the country since the pandemic. Some point to less demand, others to higher fares. But in at least one Canadian town, ridership has doubled. And that's because it's free. Anis Haydari has that story.
It's fairly easy to grab the bus in Orangeville, Ontario.
And no monthly pass, no tickets, no cash to pay for your fare pass that you have to pay in other cities.
It's free for everyone.
This is my way to get around back and forth to appointments, to my kids' school.
In 2022, around 100,000 people took the bus there. This year, they're projecting more than 260,000. Politicians were aiming for more than just convenience.
We knew that by offering fare-free transit, we could have an environmental positive impact, taking more vehicles off the road and offering a better option for our residents. But also we knew that there was a really strong social equity piece from a financial perspective.
Orangeville is testing this idea until 2027, and the mayor says it's catching on elsewhere.
I get real interest from municipalities of all sizes, from small rural to small urban like we are, right to big cities.
And the idea has made inroads in some big U.S. cities, like Kansas City, Albuquerque, and Tucson. But in Canada, this transit expert says don't expect a free ride.
It has a place, an opportunity for smaller and maybe medium-sized communities. For larger communities, such as Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, it's going to be an uphill climb.
Big cities need the money that transit fare brings in. Smaller towns can offer residents free rides, not just Orangeville, but Banff and Canmore, Alberta, too. Though larger cities have to choose who gets a discount. Here in Calgary, that targeting costs governments more than $6 million. It's meant to help younger people, seniors, and those with lower incomes. Tailoring transit discounts to specific people matches other policies in Canada, like income support or taxes.
You'd want to make it free for everyone. It's very costly. So what do? You target certain demographic that you deemed more important. So I think it's an important first step.
But it's more than a first step back in Orangeville, where the project is expanding to a nearby town. Anis Haydari, CBC News, Calgary.
Yesterday, we paused to remember military veterans for their service in current and past conflicts. But many vets are looking to their futures once they leave the forces. And for some, that means a different kind of service. Arthur White-Crummey reports.
I still have a few things to do. I'm a little behind schedule, to be honest with you. No worries, man.
Dean Brackness has always been hungry for adventure.
He sailed the high seas for the Royal Canadian Navy. Now retired, he's taking on a new challenge at Ottawa's esteemed Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School. It feels familiar.
The head chef, the commanding officer, and then he has, second commanding officers, and then all the troops or the sailors or the airmen underneath him doing what needs to get done. So it's just like, someone walking off the street from a brigade or a ship would instantly recognize the organization.
Brackness is one of 8 Canadian Armed Forces veterans now studying at Le Cordon Bleu. The classes can cost between $13,000 and $30,000. But Veterans Affairs will pick up the bill. Word is spreading, and the culinary school is seeing a steady stream of recruits. About 30 veterans have graduated so far. A handful more sign up for the introductory program every few months, like Paul Fuller.
I was always interested in cooking. I wanted to become a chef, but my mother dissuaded me. She said, do that as a hobby.
Fuller thrived on hierarchy and discipline. He joined the Cub Scouts, then the Cadets, and finally the Canadian Armed Forces. He served in Bosnia and Afghanistan and retired as a colonel after 32 years.
I saw the opportunity to further my passion and come to Le Cordon Bleu to do the culinary diploma. And my aim is after that to work part-time in an old age home to give back to the community.
He's now about a month into his basic training. He's made puff pastry, risotto, and just finished 3 days of fish. Sharma says veteran graduates have gone on to coveted positions. He says veterans seem to thrive in a high-pressure environment.
They kind of relate to the ethos and the discipline that they have had in the services. They find a similar kind of an environment here in the kitchen where it's all about teamwork, discipline, precision, being on time.
Brackness says Navy cooks are fantastic, but he worked on the bridge, not in the galley. His recipe is like a battle plan. He tries to follow it to the last detail.
You have a mission, here's your tools, that you do it, boom. And this is what you're supposed to do. And you have someone standing over you with not the clipboard, but criticizing you, So I'm in my 50s, I still get criticized for my performance. So
kind of like a drill sergeant?
Kind of, yeah, but nicer, a lot nicer.
Arthur White-Crummey, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, some of us did have some snow squalls and some blustery conditions over the weekend, so we're sort of primed for what's
I'm never quite
up.
ready, though, no.
Yeah, it's almost like, you don't want to just jump into the deep end,
No,
right?
definitely
so
not.
Mother Nature is kind of like easing us in, but tomorrow is definitely the coldest feeling winter-like day we're going to see. It's going to be even a little bit cooler than Saturday, very windy, and yeah, we'll see more flurries in the mix. So have a look at our viewer picture of the day. Great segue to what Tom was talking about on Saturday. East over, most of the province was seeing these convective bursts where it was sunny and then it was snowing and then it was sunny again. And this is just
That's very cool.
Yeah, it looks like a spaceship, doesn't it?
It does,
Sort of almost.
landing.
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's not. It's a cloud, right?
It is true. It is true. But great shot, and the sun lighting it just perfectly. Brian and Pat Redmond, thank you so much for sharing this. So for tomorrow, we will continue to see some flurries overnight into tomorrow morning. The greatest chances are going to be in the north and east, and that's where we'll see the possibility of as much as 2 to 5 centimeters of accumulation in those higher terrain areas tonight and again for tomorrow. Most of us could pick up a little coating on the grass. The best chances for that are going to be tonight down towards, say, the Halifax area. Now, as we look into Thursday, we'll see still a chance for some flurries Wednesday night into Thursday morning, but then a change over to those showers as we move into the afternoon. Temperatures bumping up a little bit, and it's all because this low is going to be working its way back from east to west. You're going to hear me say retrograding a lot this week, which is, again, a system that moves kind of the opposite direction from east back to west, and that is going to be wrapping in some milder temperatures. So temperatures will be bumping up into the weekend, but pretty unsettled.
Okay.
Sure looks
Thanks for
like
that, Brian. Well, one of the world's top-selling puzzle games is turning 50.
That's right. Rubik's Cube was invented by Hungarian Erno Rubik in 1974 as a teaching aid for university students. He marked the milestone in London this week alongside celebrities, World Cube champions, and fans.
The maddening multicolored cube with 43 quintillion possible combinations became a worldwide craze in the 1980s. Since then, the number of cubes sold is somewhere around 500 million.
That's impressive.
I remember having one.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That's it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Good night.